Assalamu alaikum. I think we'll wait another couple of minutes, inshallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا.
I was thinking we might do pray first, but then I said, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
time change.
Time change.
Yeah. So the time change. So we'll do it second, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Okay. Then we'll get started. نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وسلم. Last week we were talking about Imam Husain AS before Karbala. And so I'm going to go back into that today, inshallah. But are there any questions from last time or before?
Well, I have a question about now the last week, the one with we had a Jum'ah about Surah Al-Kahf, and then people went to the cave.
Yes.
What country was that?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, we're starting, inshallah. So question before we start, brother asked just now about Surah Kahf and about the people of the cave, and the question is where were they?
And where they were running from?
Okay, so there's difference of opinions on that, but according to most scholars, it was somewhere in Sham. Okay. So this is probably more toward northern Sham, and so you had a king that they were running from. So the king, you have to understand the story there, or the incident rather. The story sounds kind of generic. You have, like we have today, you have tyrants, and this king was a tyrant. And these were young men who were not just any young men. These were young men from very affluent families. So when someone has a lot, they also have a lot to lose. And so these were young men who were from affluent families who accepted Iman. Iman permeated into their hearts, and they want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they're in a society of disbelievers, including their families. And some of the men, their families actually work for the king. So when they do this, the king being the tyrant, and kings want to be worshipped. This is the nature of most kings. You look throughout, Firaun, this concept of Firaun. This is, what was Firaun? Or who were the Pharaohs? They were the kings of Egypt. You look throughout history, and when religion was not convenient for the kings, they changed the religion. So, even recent history, if you look at the Anglican Church, why did the Anglican Church, in Britain exist? Because the king wanted to divorce his wife, and according to the Catholic Church, if he divorced his wife, then he would be excommunicated from the church, and he didn't want that. So he makes his own church. So again, this is the way kings work. And so no different then than it is now, and vice versa. So these young men, because they're being forced into against what they know is right. So that's when they decide that they will run off. And of course, there's difference of opinion as to how many there were. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like before this, some people said there were 3, and some people said there were 5, and some people said there were 7. A lot of Muslim scholars say that there are 7 because in the verse there, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions 3, he discounts that. He mentions 5, he discounts that. But when he mentions 7, he doesn't discount it. And so then, but it really doesn't matter. There were just a few of them, a handful of them who did this, and they leave. So when they're leaving everything. They are, not just leaving their families, but they're leaving all the potential wealth that they would have inherited. So basically they're becoming destitute just to safeguard their iman. And they're willing to do this, with full conviction. They understand the ramifications of what's going, that once they leave and they practice the true religion, that they, from a worldly sense, are abandoning their wealth, their lives as they know them, all the comforts they've known, everything that they've known, they're leaving. And so that's, this again, and we talked about this in Jummah, where, the connection between Surah Kahf and Dajjal. And so this will be, and this is becoming the condition of the true believers. And this is where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a time will come, that to have iman will be like holding a burning coal in your hand. And so, again, from a worldly standpoint, is as if everything, you're leaving everything in order just to hold on to your iman. And that is truly the price of iman. This is the price of love. And iman, again, and this is why understanding Ahlul Bayt, what we've been talking about, why understanding them, knowing them, is so crucial in order for us to safeguard our iman. And why understanding the situations that they went through, the difficulties that they went through. Because there is this notion that, don't talk about the difficulties. But again, then how do we know how to navigate through life? Because life is difficulty. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described this dunya as Darul Huzn, in the world of difficulties and sorrows. And so if everything, if when you become Muslim or when you accept iman, everything becomes easy, then everybody would do it, right? So this is again that correlation between Ashab al-Kahf, the people of the cave, and Dajjal, but also that connection. And as I mentioned in the Jummah, when the blessed head, and we're going to get to this later, inshallah, but I'm just going to mention it briefly right now. When the blessed head of Imam Husain AS is taken all the way from Kufa to Damascus, and as they enter the masjid in Damascus, a reciter of the Quran is sitting there reading the Quran and he's reciting the verse, Am hasibta anna ashab al-kahf wa raqim kanu min ayatina ajaba. That do you consider that the story of the people of the cave and the inscription is something strange, something wondrous, something unusual. It's a rhetorical question, which means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, this isn't that strange. And when this verse is recited there, Imam Husain AS' blessed head, Imam Husain AS is the one he gave dawah in his life, and he gave dawah even after he's martyred, which is his better life, because the shaheed is not dead. Okay? And so he responds from there, on this, with his head on the spear, on the tip of the spear. And he says that the story of the people of the cave is not strange. My story is strange.
Or he would start talking? Right?
Yes, he spoke. His blessed head spoke there. This is because this is also proof of their life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at times will show us these proofs. If we choose to ignore them, that's our problem. But this is proof of his life. And he responds there. He says, that's not strange. My story is strange. They did what people should normally do, is when the tyrant king comes, you run away. Imam Husain AS did the opposite. The tyrant king came, and he went forward to stop him. Okay. So now coming back to where we were last week, inshallah. Now last week, initially I was drawing that not comparison, because I don't compare but the similarities between Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh as well as his two sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Husain al-Islam. And if you look at them, and if you look at what they did and why they did what they did, they are truly extensions of each other. And so it's important to understand that Imam Hassan al-Islam, under the conditions that he was in, did absolutely nothing different than what Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh would have done at that time, in those situations. And Imam Husain al-Islam did absolutely nothing different than what Imam Hassan al-Islam or Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh have done in that same situation. The situations changed, and that's why what appears to us as, they acted differently. No, they didn't act differently, they acted the same as either one of them would have. And so now, like the question people think, or question is, well, why didn't Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh hand over the rule, and yet Imam Hassan al-Islam hands over the rule? You have a very different situation here. And one of the main reasons that Imam Hassan al-Islam hands over the rule is because of the Sahih Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not the one where he says, "Inna ibni hadha sayyidun," that this son of mine is the master of men. Because of him, peace will be, two large Muslim groups will come to terms or come to peace. Not because of that, but where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the Khilafah is for 30 years. And if you start counting, Imam Hassan al-Islam handed it over the rule right at the end of the 30 years. As the 30 years ended, he did not want to be part of a system that was not part of the Khilafah. So he hands over the rule. The Khalifa cannot hand over rule. If someone is chosen as the Khalifa, then the order for him is to hold on to that shirt until his last breath. The only way a so-called Khalifa, and I'm saying so-called here, can be removed from his position is if he does something that is totally against Islam, and which none of the Khulafa did. Because the Khilafah is something very different than any other rule. This is also why Uthman radiallahu anhu did not hand over the rule, even though the people are asking him. People are all of these rebels are demanding that he step down from his position. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has also told him from before, in various narrations, that a shirt will be given to you and do not remove it. And you will be asked to, but do not remove it. So once a Khalifa is chosen by the Shura in accordance to Islam, and he is truly the Khalifa, not like these kings later on who all call themselves Khalifas, and there was no Shura. If you look at all the kings, Banu Umayyah, Banu Abbas, even the Ottoman Sultanate, all of them call themselves Khalifa. They're all kings. So if you look, like even Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu wajh, there were people who were criticizing Uthman radiallahu in front of him for various reasons, and his response to them was that if I had been there, I would have done the same thing. And so here, like as we spoke about last week, again, when you look at Imam Husain AS and Imam Husain AS, they are nothing but extensions of their father, who in reality was an extension of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as far as implementing the criteria that is meant to be implemented. When you look at them as to why, like with Imam Hassan al-Islam handing over the rule, and Ali not handing over the rule, because the Khilafah had not ended. Ali already knew, because they all knew, because the Rasulullah had told them. Again, when I look at this household, this is the household in which the revelation is coming down into. These are the people who are in the presence of the revelation of Allah to His Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are living and growing up in that environment. So we can't even begin to imagine the level of knowledge that they have. But these are also people who have completely surrendered themselves to the will of Allah. And to understand this, and I'm going to come back to this point, because these are people who have submitted themselves to the will of Allah, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them this knowledge that the rest of us don't have. But again, to understand this, we look at Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf is very interesting. It explains so many things from a spiritual aspect. Surah Yusuf is also the first surah that was taught to the people of Medina Munawwara. When Rasulullah sent Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anhu to what was then Yathrib, which will become Medina Munawwara, to teach the people a year before he himself came, the first surah that he taught them, which was the last surah that was revealed before he was sent on this mission, was Surah Yusuf. And so this is why when we look at the attitude of the Ansar toward Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is why their attitude is the way it is. And you see reflections of Surah Yusuf throughout their attitude of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the point I want to make here, more specifically, is, when the sons of Yaqub al-Islam, they come to him right at the beginning of the surah, and they say to him that, why don't you let Yusuf come and play with us? He's our brother. You don't let him play with us. You keep him to yourself. They, of course, were planning different things, because Yaqub al-Islam is Nabi. Yusuf al-Islam is also Nabi. He treated all of his sons equally, but he loved Yusuf al-Islam more. And that love, of course, love is something very hard to hide. And so that love emanates, and they are jealous of that love. So they come to him and say, why don't you let him play with us? His response is very interesting, and people don't think about this. He says that, that if I let him come with you, I am afraid that you will become busy in your play and forget about him, and the wolf will come and eat him. And they say, what? Oh, how can that be? We are, look at us, we're a very strong party, 10 of us. He had 12 sons. These are 10 that were asking for this. Binyamin is even younger than Yusuf alayhi salam. He says, we are a strong party. Nothing's going to happen to him. We'll watch out for him. How can that be? What did they come and say after they did what they did to Yusuf alayhi salam and threw him in the well? And they took his shirt and they, put the blood of a lamb on it. And they bring the shirt to him and said, we were the same exact words that he had said. That I'm afraid this is what you will come and say to me. And they said the same exact words. That, we were playing and we became unmindful and the wolf came and ate him. Yaqub al-Islam is Nabi. Yaqub al-Islam knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram for the wolf to eat a Nabi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram for the earth to devour the body of a Nabi. So he knows this. Why does he tell him that? Because he also knows exactly what they're going to say. Then the question comes, well, why did he let them go? If he knows that they're going to do this, and you read throughout Surah Yusuf, you understand, and if you read it openly, you understand Yaqub al-Islam knows. And he says, when the shirt of Yusuf al-Islam is on its way from Misr to Canaan, he says what? He says, I smell the fragrance of Yusuf, but you will call me crazy. And so many times that he makes sure that anyone who can analyze what he's saying objectively understands, he knows Yusuf al-Islam is not dead. But then the question is, why is he crying? I'm throwing several questions here. I'm going to come back to each one. But we'll come back to the why is he crying. So he tells them exactly what they're going to say. And they say the exact same words that he told them that they would say. He said, I fear this is what? Why? This is why I'm not sending him with you. But then the question comes, if he knew, then why did he send him? If he knew that they're going to do this, and he tells them exactly what's going to happen, then why did he send him? Because Yaqub al-Islam also knows the will of Allah, and he has completely submitted to that will. So he knows that the will of Allah is for him to send Yusuf al-Islam, for them to come and tell him that, we were busy and the wolf came and ate him. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take him from there and make him the ruler over Egypt. He knows all of this. He knows this is the will of Allah, and even though he anguishes over that separation. So that gets to the question of why is he crying? If he knows he's fine and he's good and this is what's going to happen, then why is he crying? Love, again, is something very hard to hide. Love also, when the tears start flowing out of love, it's not something you can control. Even when you want to stop, you can't control it. So those tears, because of that separation, now the eyes start to weep, and it cannot be controlled because of his love for Yusuf. So these are things we need to understand. These are things I'm not telling you, from here or there. These are things from the Quran. Just look at it and read it. And again, Surah Yusuf, as I said, Surah Yusuf opens so many of the doors of spirituality, as far as understanding so many of the doors of spirituality. It's very central, the various concepts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in that surah. So now, coming back to Ahlul Bayt, and specifically these three, Sayyidina Ali, Karamallahu wajhahu, Imam Husain and Imam Husain AS. So Ali rather knows that the Khilafah has not ended, which is why he does not hand over rule, which is also why before the arbitration takes place, he said that I will not accept any decision that is against the Quran and the Sunnah. And so if you look at the decision that was made through various means, it was not in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is why he, did not accept that decision, and he leaves with his army. And then, then the second decision is made of splitting the empire, which also is not Islamic. Because Islamically, the Khalifa is the Khalifa of the Muslims, of all of the Muslims, the true Khalifa. So here again, when we speak about Imam Husain al-Islam as to why did he hand over the rule, because he knew 30 years was up. And this again is knowing the will of Allah through the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said the Khilafah is for 30 years. And so when the 30 years was up, he said, that's fine, it's time for me to move aside. Because again, the Khilafah is the Khilafah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are representatives, direct representatives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the system is directly in accordance with the system of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anything that is away from that is not in direct accordance with the system of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he did not want to be a part of any system that was not 100%, not even 99%, that was not 100% in accordance with the system of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if you look at kings, you have amongst the kings some very decent kings who ruled very decently. And prime example of that is Umar bin Abdul Aziz, rahmatullah alayh. But he's still not Khalifa. Because there were aspects that did not completely comply. Because of all of the, the various governors and governments within the Khilafah, or within the rule rather, it wasn't Khilafah, within the kingdom. Okay? So again, now when we look at Imam Husain al-Islam, and I keep emphasizing this point because there are so many people who, because of social media now, have voices, who try to make the doings of Imam Husain al-Islam something other than what Imam Husain al-Islam did. And one important rule to remember, which I will reiterate again and again, is the basic rule that both of them were following, that it is decency to give up one's own rights. A decent person under situation for the better good will give up his own rights, which is exactly what Imam Husain al-Islam did. It was his right to rule. Even when the Khilafah ended, it was still his right to rule. But out of his decency, he hands over the rule for the protection of the Muslims, for the better good. Okay. And not for the better good of himself, because we've already spoken about the conditions he's living in. Okay. But for the better good of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it is hypocrisy. So a continuation of that same rule, decency to give up one's own right. It is hypocrisy to give up the rights of the ones that you claim to be your beloved. So Imam Husain al-Islam knows when Yazid becomes the king that he is going to violate, and already violating, every right of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he is not going to fulfill the rights of the people or anyone else. And so what does he do? He stands up against it. Because if he had given in to that, then, that was not befitting to his status or his character or his position as a member of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's an important rule to remember as we move forward. Any questions about that so far?
Yazid was claim he was a Muslim too at that time.
Yeah, the question is, Yazid claimed to be Muslim too, and I'll get to that. Anybody can claim anything. Okay, and yes, he did. Okay, so Yazid claim that, but then when you start looking at his statements, and the statements that aren't just characterized or written down by just anybody, but you have these statements being written down by very authentic Muslim scholars, including Tabari and multiple other sources, you will realize that he had nothing to do with the religion. The religion, as like I said in the beginning, for most kings, is a matter of convenience. So we're going to get to that later on, and you'll see that also amongst various other people, because people like to support tyranny, because we ourselves have become tyrants, and so we try to defend the tyrant in order to defend, indirectly defending ourselves, and that's basically what it boils down to. So yeah, Yazid claimed to be Muslim, and there are people who try to make him Jannati, or from Jannah, by misquoting a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is in Bukhari, which is famously known as a hadith of Constantinia, in which Constantinia is not even mentioned in the hadith. But we'll get to that also later on, inshallah. Maybe today, maybe not, but we'll see. And actually, there are aspects of that I can mention right now, because Imam Husain AS was still around when certain aspects of this took place. Actually, since I brought it up, I'll go ahead and go over that, since Imam Husain AS is also involved in this. The hadith in Sahih Bukhari, where Rasulullah says more or less that he says, "Awwalu jayshin," the first army that attacks Madinatul Qais, or Madinatul Qais, Qaisar. So the city of Qusra, the city of the Byzantine or Roman emperor. So the first army that will attack that, maghfur lahum, is blessed or forgiven. Okay. So what the people do, so here Rasulullah doesn't mention Constantinople, even though we have various other hadiths in which he directly mentions Constantinople. So for those who always are attacking the knowledge of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for them to try to say, oh, he didn't know Constantinople, well, you have various other hadiths where he mentions Constantinople by name. In this hadith, he doesn't mention Constantinople. He says the city of Qaisar. So what they do is they say, see, Yazid was in that army. But if you look at, and I'll get back to that point of Yazid being in that alleged army. If you look at the city of Qaisar, when Rasulullah is delivering this message to the companions, when he's making this statement in front of the companions, was not Constantinople. The city of Qaisar at that time was Homs, which is, in, southern, I'm not sure what country it would be right now, Jordan or somewhere.
Syria,
It's lower down. So, yeah, Homs. It might be in Syria, or lower part of Syria.
I think it is, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so it's lower Syria.
I think.
Yes, lower part of modern day Syria. So that was the capital of Heraclius, who was Qaisar at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. It wasn't, and that city was attacked at the end of the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and the beginning of the Khilafah of Umar. This is before Yazid was even born. Okay. So if I simply take the words of the hadith, then, well, Yazid doesn't fit. Okay. But even if I say, okay, no, maybe it is Constantinople. Which it's not, but let's for the sake of argument, say, okay, yeah, I agree that it's Constantinople. Well, the campaign that Yazid was involved still wasn't the first attack on Constantinople. it was at earliest the 8th attack on Constantinople. You know, because you had various other attacks on Constantinople by various other armies of the Muslims before Yazid was involved. And Yazid wasn't sent there because he wanted to go. When, you know, because the attack that Yazid is involved in is during the time of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So he sends the army, and in that army included Ibn Abbas radiallahu, as well as Imam Husain AS and Imam Husain AS. And they had a very difficult time, and they were basically starving. They had run out of rations. They were having, you know, it was a very, you know, they couldn't penetrate the walls of the city. And so they wrote a letter to Muawiyah telling about their difficulties. And Yazid, when he heard about this, was sitting making poetry about how he's comfortably sitting with his wife while they are having such difficulties. You know, basically saying he's better off than they are. And so as a punishment, Muawiyah forced him to go. So even then he doesn't qualify. But again, that was the 8th attack on Constantinople during the time, or by the Muslim armies, not even the first. So there's no way Yazid even fits. But even if he did fit, let's say this was the first attack, even then, you know, there's so many various narrations of Rasulullah that if someone does this, then, you know, I guarantee Jannah. If someone does this, I guarantee this. Okay. But all of the understanding of every narration like that, and even the verses of the Quran that talk about the forgiveness like this, is that the aqeedah of the person must be right. Just like we've talked about the hadith in Mustadrak al-Hakim, which has the same narrators of Bukhari and Muslim, where the person dies in a condition where he's fasting and making sajda in between the door of the Kaaba and Maqam Ibrahim. He dies in that condition and goes to hell. Why? Because he has in his heart the animosity against Ahlul Bayt. I mean, he dies, you know, according to everything that we could tell, he dies in a condition where he should be forgiven and go directly to paradise. Yet the opposite happens. Why? Because his aqeedah, or his belief, is not proper. Okay? So, you know, from that standpoint, yeah, Yazid claimed to be Muslim. Yazid's mother was Christian. When he was 3 or 4 years old, his mother and his father had a dispute, and she left and took him to her village and raised him in her village, which was a village of Christians. And he was raised amongst the Christians, and he acted as them while he was amongst them. And he acted as them even later on as well, because he made that statement to Abdullah ibn Hanzala radiallahu anhu. And since I'm talking about this, I would just keep going on this for the moment, because these are important points to note, and it will make it clearer as we move forward. You know, when Ayyam al-Hurra took place, actually before Ayyam al-Hurra took place because of this. When Imam Husain AS is martyred in Karbala, Yazid, you know, there's this whole commotion amongst the whole ummah as to what has happened. And Yazid needs to basically take certain steps in order to secure his position and try to keep the people from rising up against him. You know, like what the politicians are doing right now. You know, suddenly they're talking about, oh, we need to do this and that, you know, to protect these people that we are actually killing ourselves and paying money to be killed. But we got to drop food on them, and we got to do this, and we got to do that. It's all, you know, just a last-ditch effort to get some votes, not because they actually want to do anything. And it's just blatant. So same thing then. You know, people don't change overall. So individuals may change, but people in general don't change. So when he does this, so he realizes he's got to get the people of Hijaz on his side. So he sends messages to people from Hijaz, from Medina and Mecca, inviting them as guests. And one of the people that he invites is Abdullah ibn Hanzala, radiallahu anhu. And it's interesting, a lot of people, when they talk about him, don't mention that he's a Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he is. He is the son of Hanzala, radiallahu anhu. He was conceived, Abdullah ibn Hanzala was conceived on the day of Uhud. His father is the one who was bathed by the angels and the Hur, because he came into the battle in a condition where he had not bathed, and he was martyred in that battle in that condition. And as they're burying him, companions could see droplets of water upon him. And when they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told them that he is being bathed by them. And so he was conceived on that day. He is born, Uhud took place 3rd year of Hijrah. So he's in Shawwal, 3rd year of Hijrah. So he's born 4th year of Hijrah. He is a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's raised in the house of Talha bin Ubaidullah, radiallahu anhu, who is Ashar Mubashara. That was his stepfather. And so when this happens with Imam Husain AS, he is one of those who's invited because he has significant people of Medina respected him. So he goes with his sons, and Yazid gives him as a gift, and of course gift had implications with it, 100,000 dirham. And to each of his sons, and he had, I'm not sure exactly how many went, but I think he had like 10 sons. I think maybe like 6 or 7 of them went with him on this journey. To each son he gave 10,000 dirham. And Ibn Kathir mentions this as well in Al-Badaya wa Nihaya. When he returns, the people ask him, what did you see? And his response is, I saw a man who has no religion. Not a morning goes by that he is not hungover. He womanizes. He spends time with young boys. That's a very polite way of putting what he's doing. And he mentions several things about him. So then the people say, well, what are you going to do? You accepted this gift from him. He says, I'm going to use this to raise an army to go and fight him. Because I've heard so many of these guys on YouTube, who are the lovers and defenders of Yazid, they talk about, the people of Medina rose up against him, and they say, none of the companions rose up against him. Well, the companions were the leaders of the ones who rose up against him. Because they know that most people don't know. So they can throw out that lie, and people will just, Again, Abdullah ibn Hanzala, even though he was young when Rasulullah passed away, he is still a companion of Rasulullah. And not just any companion. He is a well-respected companion of Rasulullah, and in his era, well-respected amongst the people of Medina, as someone very knowledgeable and someone who, was in line with the Sunnah of Rasulullah. He starts to raise this army. And of course, spies in Medina, and they send word to Yazid that this is what's going on, and that's when he sends the army, which decimated Medina Munawwara. After which there were no Badri companions left because they killed so many companions of Rasulullah and all these other things. And people still defend him. And still think that, he's Muslim. I mean, even just the action of sending the army against Imam Husain AS, knowing who Imam Husain AS is, I mean, that in itself should be enough for someone to understand, oh, he has nothing to do with Iman. But they don't. But then you have Ayyam Hurra, and then after Ayyam Hurra, those 3 days where his army uses the Masjid of Rasulullah as a stable. Then he sends the army against Makkah because Abdullah ibn Zubair, then when he sees this happening in Medina, he declares himself as the leader, and all the people of Hijaz accept him. So he sends the army now to Makkah, and this army rains fire into Makkah, and the Kaaba is burned, and 3 of its walls fall. And the horns which Ibrahim al-Islam of the ram, which Ibrahim al-Islam has slaughtered, were still in the Kaaba. They were burned. All of these things happen, and then he dies during that siege. Yazid dies during that siege, while the siege is going on of Makkah. He doesn't even have an opportunity to make tawbah. So people say, oh, maybe he made tawbah. I mean, maybe anybody made tawbah. Maybe. You can say maybe to anything. So maybe he made tawbah. He dies in the middle of that siege. If he had made tawbah, he would have ended the siege. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give someone who is the enemy of Ahlul Bayt and commits all these atrocities against Ahlul Bayt even the opportunity to make tawbah. These are very difficult things for us to comprehend, and we think, if he knew the status of Ahlul Bayt, then why is he? It's like what's going on right now. Like Shaitan. Shaitan knew that the order to make sajda to Adam al-Islam came from no one other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew that without a doubt. He didn't dispute that. But his ego, do they not know what they're doing right now is wrong? Killing women and children and everybody else? They don't know that? Don't the Muslim countries know that not to help them is wrong? They know that. But the ego and that worship of wealth and status.
But they don't want to lose what they have.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to lose what they have, or what they think they have. Everything is Allah's.
That's true.
We just have it as a trust, and we don't. And if we approach it as that, then we deal with it as such. But we don't approach it as that. We think, oh, we are the owners now. And so kings are kings, and tyrants are tyrants. And in many cases, they're the same. And this is, again, the age of tyrants, and we see nothing but tyranny everywhere. So, all of these things that I mentioned so far are things that we will be talking about in more detail as we go forward. But these are also things that we need to understand, and the reason I went ahead and mentioned them now is that when I mention them later and start giving more details, it'll be easier to remember. And as I said, memory is, when you keep adding on a little bit, it makes it easier to remember things. If you try to remember something as a whole, it gets hard. You know a little bit, and then you add on to that, and then you add on a little bit more, and you keep adding, then in the end you get a much better understanding of what's going on, and it's easier to remember that way. Okay? But I'll go into a lot more detail about Ayyam al-Hurra and the siege of Makkah and all of those later on, inshallah.
Ayyam al-Hurra stands for 3 days?
3 days. It's the 3 days Hurra is calamity, and because this was the Ayyam, of course, days, but it's here we're talking about 3 days. And this calamity that befell the people of Medina Munawwara. And this is also why Imam Husain AS left, because that becomes a question. Why did he leave? Why didn't he stay? Why did he leave Makkah? Why didn't he stay? Because he knew who he was dealing with. And he knew that people who have lost Iman have no limits. Or people who don't have Iman have no limits. And so that the sanctity of Medina Munawwara or the sanctity of the Kaaba or Makkah means nothing to them. Now, this is one important point to understand too, since it's kind of sort of come up here now. if you look at the Kaaba has been destroyed several times. This was one time when Yazid's forces destroyed it. There are other times later on afterwards, to the extent that even the black stone was taken away and was gone for many years before finally it was brought back. And at some point we might get into the details of that. But the reason I bring it up right now is because many Muslims also, think this way. But there's this atheist who's talking about, and it's funny, he's atheist from a different religion, but he wants to attack Islam. If you're an atheist from a different religion, attack the religion you came from. Okay? Yeah. So he's atheist from a different religion, but he wants to attack Islam. And he brings up the point about, the Muslims say that, when Abraha came to attack the Kaaba, the grandfather of Rasulullah, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, of course he doesn't say Hazrat, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, radiallahu anhu, he made the dua that, oh Allah, this is your house, and even the camel protects its young, so this is your house, so you protect it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't allow anything to happen to his house. So if that was the case, then why did he allow it to be destroyed later on? So that means it's not the house of Allah. That's the extension that he's going to. Okay. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not protect the Kaaba at that time because the Kaaba is his house, even though it is his house. The Kaaba was washed away in the flood of Nuh alayhi salam. The foundations remained. Ibrahim alayhi salam raised the foundations, right? The Kaaba doesn't matter whether you have that physical structure there or not. It's still the Kaaba. Okay? But the question comes up, why did he protect it against the army of Abraha? And yet he didn't protect it against the army of Yazid or these later armies that came. Right? Because the reason for his protecting it against the army of Abraha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not protect the Kaaba as the Rabb of the Kaaba, even though he is the Rabb of the Kaaba. Surah Alam Tara, Surah Fil. فَعَلَى رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. He doesn't say, did you not see what the Lord of the Kaaba did to the people of the elephant? He says, Alam Tara Kayfa, Alam Tara Kayfa, فَعَلَى رَبُّكَ. Did you not see what your Lord did to the people of the elephant? So he protected the Kaaba not as the Lord of the Kaaba, even though he is the Lord of the Kaaba. He protected the Kaaba as the Lord of Rasulullah. This incident happened when? Abraha? Roughly 60 days before the birth of Rasulullah. If he had allowed the Kaaba to be destroyed at that time, then all of the people of Makkah, according to the rules of war at that time, would have been taken as slaves, including the mother of Rasulullah. And then she would have been taken away. Ibrahim al-Islam built the Kaaba as the pulpit of Rasulullah from the point from where he is to begin his preaching. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the Kaaba as the Lord of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so that this is where he will begin his mission. This is why he protected the Kaaba against the army of Abraha. Again, if they come and destroy the Kaaba, it's still the Kaaba. That place is still the Kaaba.
I want to ask you a question. I seen on a video them small stone inside the Kaaba. What that thing represented? A little bitty stone. I don't know about how many of them.
Oh, the stones. He's asking about the stones inside the Kaaba. Actually, those are the black stone.
I've seen them on YouTube, but yeah. I don't know what that is.
There's stones like in the wall.
The glasses, like glasses looking, you look, people going look through to it.
Actually, you kiss it.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's talking about the Hajar Aswad. So the black stone. So it used to be like during the time of Rasulullah, it was one stone.
Okay.
And this is what he places himself in that spot. Then later on, when the Kaaba was destroyed by this other army, they took the Hajar Aswad away, and they took it to
Turkey?
No, not to Turkey. They took it to I guess today where you have like UAE and Abu Dhabi and all that area,
Okay.
to the Gulf area.
I was
This is where they were from, this army. And they said, oh, this is shirk. People are committing shirk by kissing the Hajar Aswad. This was their reasoning. This is like 400 or 500 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I forget the exact dates. I'll look that up and we'll talk about that much later. But they came in, they took it away, and they broke it.
Oh, they broke it.
They broke it. And so this is, so when that scholar finally went and was able to get it back from them, then it came back in pieces. So what they did, so it's embedded in that area, and then now they've got that silver, I guess, frame around it, and so you go and that's where you go. So the different pieces, they're like, again, they broke it, and because again this was shirk. So you can draw this analogy to the same people today. Everything is shirk. Okay? So they were saying, oh, this is shirk, you're kissing the Hajar Aswad and you're doing this, and all of this is shirk.
So you say the first time Ibrahim put it in as a one piece?
Well, yeah, Ibrahim a.s. also put it in, but then Rasulullah s.a.w. when they rebuilt the Kaaba, he also placed it back, and it was still one stone at that time.
One stone. But then somebody took it,
broke it, yeah. Okay, because they were destroying the idol, astaghfirullah. There's a huge difference between us, in us kissing the Hajar Aswad and the mushrikeen kissing their idols, the idol worshippers. We kiss it not because we worship the stone, but we kiss it out of love and affection of Rasulullah because of his connection to that. And we also understand that this stone will also benefit and harm us, because this stone will also testify to the iman of those who come before it with iman, and testify to the disbelief of those who come before it with disbelief, which means both people must go. Okay? So, and now coming back to what I was supposed to be talking about. We've kind of diverged quite a bit today. So Imam Husain AS, after his brother passes, he's there for another 10 years. He doesn't cause any issues. He avoids the politics. Anyone who wishes to come and learn from him, he is happy to teach them. Anyone who wishes or is willing to associate with him, he's happy to take them in. Because but people are scared also to associate with him, because they know the government doesn't like it, the ruling party, and at this time you still have Marwan as the governor for a good portion of it, and then. And even the others, they were still from Banu Umayyah. They may not have been as extreme as Marwan, but their attitude was the protection of their government. Okay. And we spoke last week about, when that announcement is made, that Yazid will be the heir to the throne. And we spoke about the reaction of Abdul Rahman bin Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who is the son of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the brother of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, and how he responded, and then ran into her house because they were going to arrest him, and then how he is conveniently found dead in a cave on the outskirts of Mecca and buried in Mecca, and then she comes and visits his grave later on. So that is like right around 56 Hijri. So we spoke about this, and we spoke about her conversation, if you can call it that, with Marwan. Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha's conversation, the mother of the believers, the wife of Rasulullah, beloved wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we spoke all about that. And so now, you basically have, when this happens, okay, so you had, as I said, 5 people in Medina at that time who said absolutely no, we are not accepting this. And Abdul Rahman initially is the most vocal. He is conveniently removed from the scene. And so by the time, so now you have these 4 people. 3 Abdullahs and Imam Husain AS. I mean, 3 Abdullahs are Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Abdullah ibn Zubair, radiallahu anhum. So these 3 and Imam Husain AS. And it's understood, and this is the attitude of the people of Medina Munawwara, that if Imam Husain AS accepts him, they will all fall in line. They will all say yes, because of their honor and respect for Imam Husain AS. And if the other 3 accept him, then you will have some who may fall in line. If Imam Husain AS accepts him, everybody will say yes, we accept him, including these 3. If one of them accepts him, of the 3 accepts him, then yeah, it's kind of up in the air. The 2 of them that Yazid and his supporters were not worried about were Abdullah ibn Umar and Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Because these 2, you have different personalities, and these 2 were more geared or more involved in like acts of worship and stuff, even though the other 2 were well as well. But the other 2, Imam Husain al-Islam and Abdullah ibn Zubair radiallahu anhu, these 2 did not shy away from any political issues. So if something political came up, they weren't hesitant to say what they felt. The other 2, kind of looking at the situation, may not voice their opinion. And so that's why they weren't very worried about those 2. These are the 2 main ones that they focus on. And these 2, so this goes on, again, you have the same situation as we had during the time of Imam Husain al-Islam, as far as attitudes toward Ahlul Bayt. The original people of Medina, of course, understand the status of Ahlul Bayt, and they're very they very much want to honor them and respect them and to follow them. But again, the political environment is such that they're also afraid that what will happen, to them and their families. So, but they are basically, when one of them is asked, well, who do you support? They say basically, whoever, Imam Husain al-Islam supports, we will support whoever he supports. So eventually, this kind of situation stays. In the meantime, through force, all the other areas other than Kufa, which is Iraq. So Kufa is the center of Iraq. So whenever I say Kufa, we're talking Iraq in general. So with the exception of Kufa, all the other places kind of fall into line. As far as, yes, when Yazid, when Muawiyah radhiyallahu anhu passes away, we will give our full support and loyalty to Yazid. significant, other than exactly what happens, is there's a dua of Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu. So Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, of course, is narrator of so many ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to make a dua that, "Oh Allah, do not allow me to see the year 60. And he passes away the year 59 Hijri.
So he didn't make 60.
He did not want to see the year 60. And he would also say, "Do not allow me to see the kingdom of the boy." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled his dua. Yeah. Hang on one second. Did you just do that? Or did I just notice it? Yeah. उसमें वो देखो उसको आ रही है आवाज? Yeah, so I don't know what happened. अभी भी आ रही? Yeah, I'll just leave it because I don't know what's going on. It does this from time to time. The audio is still, it's saying that there's no sound input, but the sound's going through. Okay. So just, I'll end in a few minutes. So, two things. So, Abdul Rahman bin Abu Bakr passes 56 Hijri, or is martyred 56 Hijri. The mother of the believers, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, passes 58 Hijri or so, somewhere in there. So also before all of this happens. The only wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that will be alive at that time will be his oldest wife, who is Bibi Salma radiallahu anha. And we'll talk about that again later as well. But coming back to this. So Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu used to make this dua. And in the year 59 Hijri, he becomes ill. And he's laying on his deathbed. Literally laying on his deathbed. And Marwan comes to visit him. And the famous Marwan. And Marwan, sits beside him, sitting beside him while he's on his deathbed. And he's too weak to get up. And Marwan makes this comment to him. He says that, Abu Huraira, we loved everything about you. We loved you so much. We loved everything about you, except, but again, this is a man who can't open his mouth without insulting the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he says, we've loved everything about you except your love of Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam. So when Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu hears this, again, this is a man who is laying on his deathbed, too weak to sit up. But when he hears this, he sits up. He literally sits up. And he looks at Marwan and he says to him, and he tells him this incident. He says that we were on an expedition with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and along with us was the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And from her hawdaj, as we were coming back, from her hawdaj, there is the sound of crying. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stops the army. This is one thing. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam found the crying of Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam very painful to himself. To the extent that, like, even in Medina Munawwara, there was a woman who lived close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, And sometimes there would be, one time there was crying coming from her house. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went to the house and knocked on the door, and she answered, and he asked her, why is the child crying? She said, is her child. And she said, he's upset, because he wanted something and we're not giving it to him. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says to her, he says, give it to him on my behalf, because his crying reminds me of the crying of Hussein. So when this crying is coming, he says that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stops the army and he goes to the hawdaj of his daughter. The hawdaj, of course, is the box that the women would travel in on top of the camels. And he says to her, he says, why are my children crying? Why are my sons crying? And she says that they are thirsty and there's nothing to drink. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam turned to the army and he asked, who has something to drink? And Abu Huraira, he says that we all looked, to our canteens or whatever, our bags, because everyone wanted the honor of giving, something to drink to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so that he could give it to his sons, to his grandsons, but he referred to them as his sons. And so we all looked and no one had anything. And so when and we come to him and we say, no one has it, we're all out. Everybody's out of it, any water or anything to drink. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says to his daughter, he says, give me my son. And Abu Huraira, he says that we saw the arm, of Bibi Fatima Salamullah alayha come out, and in her arms is Imam Husain AS, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam takes him and holds him in his arm and places his tongue in the mouth of Imam Husain AS. And Imam Husain AS suckles that until he is satisfied. And then he gives him back and he says, give me my other son. And she gives him Imam Husain AS, and the same thing. And he suckles until he is satisfied. And then he gives him back, and then we continue. But Abu Huraira, he says to Marwan, he says, how can I not love those like this? How can I not love them when I know this about them? And Marwan knew this about them, but, again, his ego. So, So this happened 59 Hijri. So, 22nd Rajab, year 60 Hijri, is when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu passes. And Yazid assumes the throne. As we spoke about before, the companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam are not ma'soom. And this is an important point to understand. I keep iterating this point. They are not ma'soom. They are mahfuz. They are protected. They make mistakes, but they always use that door of tawbah. So the question comes up, what tawbah did Muawiyah radiallahu make, and how did he make it? If you look, when Muawiyah radiallahu is passing, or about to pass, he dictates or he makes certain directives. One is that he had certain blessed hair of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He also had some of the blessed nail clippings of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he also had one of the sheets of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the sheet he acquired from the family of Ubay bin Ka'b, and he gave 80,000 dirham for the sheet, which is a lot of money. because they were poor, and he invited them to Damascus from Sham with the excuse that, oh, I want to see that sheet. I just want to see it. And when they get there, he asks for the sheet. And they say, it's not for sale, and we're not giving it to anybody. But he insists, and since he's the leader, they give it to him, and he gives them 80,000 dirham. Okay? So he says, make the sheet my coffin, place the blessed hair of Rasulullah in my mouth, and the nail clippings on my eyes, so that perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look upon me with mercy in my grave. So even though he is a companion of Rasulullah, even though he is the brother-in-law of Rasulullah, because his sister is Habiba, radiallahu anha, who is the wife of Rasulullah, even though he is katibul way, but he in the sense that he wrote a letter that Rasulullah dictated. Okay. See, a lot of people say he's katibul way, and they think, oh, he wrote verses of the Quran. He did not. He wrote a letter, but it's still way because it's from the lips of Rasulullah. So he's katibul way in the sense that he wrote a letter that Rasulullah had dictated. But he doesn't put any trust in any of this. But he wants the sheet of Rasulullah as his coffin, the blessed hair in his mouth, and the blessed eye clippings in his fingernail clippings in his eyes. But he also, at that time, withdraws the nomination of Yazid, and this is something that's mentioned in very few books, because it's not anything that. And the reason it's not mentioned in more books is, one is Banu Umayyah are going to hide this, and especially Yazid is going to hide this. And also the haters of Muawiyah are going to hide this, because it becomes harder to hate him when you know this, which is the truth. But also the flip side on the other side is that those who support Yazid aren't going to mention this, because then it truly takes away any justification they have for him being the ruler. So Muawiyah withdraws the nomination. However, Yazid was not there, and the people that were there, who had any authority, don't push this issue, because for two reasons. One is if any one of them tried to push the issue, he would be beheaded. But the other thing is that they're looking at it from the standpoint of, Yazid becomes the king, and they support him, and they get, just like with Qarun and Haman and all the wazirs of Fir'aun, they will get wealth out of this as well. So then when Yazid returns and he finds his father has passed, he assumes the throne, becomes the king, and then we get into this next week, inshallah. Any questions so far?
I have a question, but it's not. I guess it's turning to Ramadan instead of.
Okay, that's fine. Inshallah.
For Ramadan, I know I ask it every year, but for Ramadan, if I want to learn like the Ramadan du'as and stuff like that, are there certain ones that'd be good to learn starting off with, or if I want to.
Yeah, actually,
Ramadan, improve this Ramadan.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the right intention, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to improve. There are a few I'll send you some to start off with, and so you can learn those du'as. And I probably need to make a copy of some things and put it down on paper. I got a book somewhere, I got to find it, where it basically has various du'as of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for various times. Like, the dua after the Sunnah Fajr, and the dua, this time, that time, and various other times. So I'll start making copies of that, and get it to you, inshallah. And that way, so I think, just remind me in a couple of days. If I don't send you anything, I'll go ahead and send you a few things today. But otherwise, remind me later on, inshallah. Okay?
Okay, because I bought a book. I know you want me about the book, but I bought a book to try to learn something. And if I do learn some of the book, is there a certain amount we should know, or?
No, I mean, whatever you can learn. And the more, the better. So, so whatever you can learn. And, like I said, and next time you come, bring the book. And then that way I can look through it, and then maybe we can prioritize which ones to learn first. And kind of make it, because you also, some of them are a lot easier to remember than others. So you want to start off with the easier ones anyway, because what you'll start finding is some of the words will repeat, and if you know them in one place, then it's easier to remember them in other places. Okay, inshallah.
Okay, my last question.
Yes.
Tonight is 9:15 for Isha.
Yeah, 9:15 for Isha, inshallah. Well, what I'm telling people is 9:15. And so we'll probably start a few minutes after that, though, as far as Isha Salat, and then we'll wait and see if we get any news on the moon. Some places are already announced based off of what Saudi is doing, but Saudi, they made their announcement 3 decades ago, so yeah, but so yeah, and our system, when the moon is sighted and we have confirmation that that the shahada has been taken, then we'll make the announcement, inshallah. And like I said, there are a few or a couple of organizations that I'm in contact with, and then that way, that have I guess people in various places in various cities. So even if it's cloudy here, then we'll, if we get news from someplace else and it's reliable news, then we'll make the announcement, inshallah. Okay.
Okay.
So we don't know for sure tomorrow's.
Yeah, we don't know for sure.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question. So Saudi make it, let's say, Monday, but Iran make it Tuesday. I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah, so he's asking, Saudi's making it Monday, and Iran is making it Tuesday. Iran, well, part of that also is that if one does one thing, the other's going to do another thing. But, it's just, and all of this is part of the show. But generally speaking, Iran still does they still go by the actual sighting of the moon, whereas Saudi, even though they claim that they're sighting the moon, they're obviously not, and it's very blatant. And even like their definition of new moon has changed. They changed it back to the right definition, but then they changed the way they administer it. So basically, what Saudi says now is that if there is a possibility of the moon being sighted anywhere in the world, they will go by that.
Okay.
But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't tell us to go by the possibility of seeing the moon. He told us to go by seeing the moon. Because in the hadith it's very clear that if it's cloudy and you don't see the moon, even though it might have been possible that the moon was there. Yes. Okay.
So the noise canceling. But it's noise canceling. It still can do it? Oh.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I think so even though Even if you look at the hadith, okay, you know, he says if it's cloudy and you don't see the moon, then finish the month of 30 days and the next day. It could have been possible that the moon was there, right? So it's not on the possibility of seeing the moon, it's on seeing the moon, you know, and giving the shahada.
It's not like something you're not sure, make sure something is there.
Yes.
For sure.
Because this is not a religion of doubt.
Okay.
You know, the Quran is not a book of doubt, and this is not a religion of doubt. This is also why it's important for us to know why we do what we do. And this has become the problem, you know, and why the Wahhabis specifically have thrived is because many people do the right thing, you know, but they don't know why, and then when the Wahhabis attack them, they have no defense. And then suddenly the Wahhabis start, you know, throwing out Quran and Hadith out of context, of course, and then confuse the people. So, but this is also part of why we're doing these classes, is to at least have some understanding of why we believe the way we believe. Okay? So, inshallah, I'll end here. If there are any other questions, just write them down, and we'll, like we did today, you know, we'll just start off with whatever questions. Yeah, inshallah. Ameen, Ramadan Mubarak, inshallah. And we will continue classes during Ramadan, inshallah. Okay. So, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we'll end here. Yeah, I'm not sure what the latest is going. It kind of depends on what's going on. So probably like 10:30 or so.
I have one question about Isha Salat. Since
Yes.
you mentioned it.
Yes.
See, on the job, I do a Isha Salat on my break. On my break, it's at 1 o'clock. I mean, that's